We are rolling. Okay. So today is the 4th
4th of January.
of January
2015.
2015. You're my first interview of the year.
Right?
Yeah. Of the
Yes.
of
2015.
And we are with Stanley. Stanley, how do you write your name in Hebrew? Samech
Samach Vav
Vav.
Bet Reis.
That's your last name?
Sober. Yeah,
Sober, and your first name? Stanley.
Stanley. Samach Tet Nun Lamed Yud.
Stanley Sober. Stanley, we are at your house in Raanana at Achuzat Bait.
Yes.
Like we said, it's the 4th of the 1st, 2015, and this is our first interview
Correct.
with Stanley Sober.
That's me.
Stanley, can you give me your date of birth?
I was born on the 19th of March, 1924.
19th of March.
1924 in London, England.
And can you please give me a little bit of background about your parents and
And I was one of twins. I was born a few minutes after my brother, so that I was actually the youngest in the family. My family consisted of father and mother. The oldest was a daughter who died before I was born. Then there was a son, my older brother, a daughter, and then my brother Ivor and myself. I was born, as I say, in London, England. My family was Jewishly observant. My father was Shomer Shabbos. I remember he used to chain smoke during the week, but he never smoked on Shabbos. Things did change after many years, but I'm talking about...
So you're 3 children in the family, is that correct?
No, 4, because the oldest had died.
And what was her name?
My oldest brother was called Aubrey. My older sister was Joyce. And then there was Ivor and Stanley, who were the twins, the youngest in the family.
You were the youngest.
I was the youngest.
And your older twin?
My older twin, Ivor, was born a few minutes, so they say, before me. He was slightly heavier than me, slightly larger, so that I was always in the situation of trying to catch up to him, particularly by my mother.
Okay. I want you to tell me a little bit about your family background, your parents, their names, where they were from, what were their occupation. Give me a little bit of background.
My father was born in Poland, in Lomże, which was at that time a Jewish city. He and his father and family came to England in the late 1890s.
Okay.
When my father was a child. Their name in Poland was Soberski, and the family changed the name in England, I think about 1924 or thereabouts, knocking off the ski, so the name became Sober.
So the original name is Soberski?
Soberski, Soberski. That's how we became Sober. My mother was born in England. Her father and mother were immigrants to England, as far as I know. My mother's father died as a young man long before I was born, so of course I never met him. The family name was Bernstein. And my mother was one of, I think, 10 children. My father was one of 8.
And both families were religious?
No, my mother's family was not religious, and that was a source of some tension in the family, which persisted. There was a lot of tension, actually. I would say my childhood was not a happy one.
Wow.
Although I suppose by comparison my family was relatively well off in that we lived. I was born in Golders Green. I was born in New Cross, which is southeast London, and as a young child, I don't remember how old, we moved to Golders Green. Golders Green was relatively affluent at that time. It was Jewish, but not as Haredi as it is now.
Right. But let's get back to your family component for a second, and let's really talk about, so you say your mother's family is not religious, your father's family is religious, and
yes.
You as a child felt this tension between the two families, or between your parents.
Yes. As I say, my childhood I regard as being an unhappy one because my parents quarreled a lot. There was never any violence, but there was a lot of tension. Particularly my mother, I look now, I don't know necessarily how I felt then, but my mother was always resentful of my father's family somehow. And my father, I think, was not so bothered by my mother's family. In fact, he employed one of my uncles in his store. But there was always a lot of tension, which got worse over the years.
Wow.
They eventually divorced.
Your parents divorced?
Yes.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that now. What can you tell me about your father's profession? What was your father's name?
My father was Morris.
Name? Morris.
Yes.
Moshe.
His Hebrew name was Moshe Mordechai.
Moshe Mordechai.
He was Morris Sober, but he was always known in the store as Mr. Morris.
Tell me about his store. He had a store?
He had a store in Houndsditch, London, a wholesale warehouse store with clothing. And the original store was a relatively small one, similar to many of the stores on Houndsditch. He was a successful businessman, and in fact subsequently enlarged the store to a very sizable store, which was 5 stories in height, and which included virtually all kinds of clothing for men and women. It included furniture, shoes, boots and shoes, as well as underwear and suits and fashion for the women. So it was quite a big store. My father was completely devoted to business, much more so than to family. In fact, my mother used to accuse him of only being interested in money. I suppose that's true, but he was not an emotional man. As children, we were much closer to mother than father. Looking back, I think it was not entirely fair, but that's the way we felt at the time.
You don't hold any resentment to him.
I did.
You did.
As a child,
sure.
as a child, I did, and not only he seemed to be something of a killjoy, if I might put it that way. Certainly, we were much closer to Mother. When we went on vacation, which we did sometime in the late 30s, in 37, 38, and 39, we took vacations taking a car and the ferry to France, and then driving through France and Switzerland and Italy.
Wow.
That was something that wasn't done widely in those days.
Absolutely.
In those days, of course, English were relatively insular and spent their time in England. We did this with another family touring. My father would not come for the first part of the journey. My older brother would be the driver. My mother never drove. And he would take a train and meet us in the south of France. He was too busy in the store to take off the 2 or 3 weeks that we did. Where am I?
So basically, your father was devoted to his business. Your mother, you guys were much closer to your mother.
To my mother.
What was your mother's name?
Clara.
Claire?
Clara Bernstein.
Clara.
C-L-A-R-A.
Clara Bernstein. And so you relatively grew up in a comfortable family. You were provided for.
Yes. We were never in need. My father had a car long before anyone else in his family.
Would you say upper middle class?
Yes, I suppose it would be that.
Yeah. And what kind of Jewish community are you affiliated with as a child?
Orthodox.
Okay.
Of course, I was born in 1924, and the different branches of Judaism were not established at that time.
You had
all the children were Orthodox.
Exactly.
I remember very vaguely attending the synagogue in New Cross, although I must have been quite a small child at that time. There was a cousin whose name was Lewis, I think, but I can't remember who the rabbi was. We lived in New Cross, which was substantially Jewish, but not exclusively Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
My mother had a millinery store at that time.
She had a what?
Millinery. She sold hats. So she was a capable woman. She sewed. She was a very skilled seamstress. As far as I know, untrained, she just learned, but she would perhaps go and see a dress in a store that she liked, and she would then go home and create that dress without a pattern. She never used patterns, but she somehow had it in her head. So she
had a photographic memory.
And the skill that she could, if she saw something, she could produce it. At least that's my recollection.
Sure.
How accurate it was, I don't know,
Sure.
but she certainly was able to sew very, very skillfully.
Did your house? So you, of course, you kept kosher in the house.
Yes.
The house was kosher. Do you remember the holidays? Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach.
I don't remember anything really of that.
Okay.
When I was in New Cross.
Okay.
In Golders Green, we lived only a block or two away from the shul. That's the Golders Green shul, which is still functioning.
Sure.
At that time, it was the only shul in Golders Green, as far as I'm aware. When I still lived in Golders Green, there was a Hasidic, not Hasidic, but a more strict Beth Medrash established. Beth Medrash.
If I ask you to think, and this is maybe for some people it's a very hard question. For me, it's a hard question even. What is your first memory as a child? Do you remember one of your not first, but earliest memories? It could be of your parents or of your home or an uncle. Or
I have somehow in the back of my mind a memory of being in a car, which was a luxury at that time. I think it was a Bianchi, as I recall the name of I'm not sure if that's correct. Somehow I've got just a picture of being in that car.
Uh-huh.
I would say after that, the memory was in New Cross, living in a house, a nice middle-class house, with in the back of the house was what we called a conservatory, which is a little glass enclosure. And I remember with my brother and I playing in the garden with bows and arrows. And one time the arrow hit the conservatory with one of the paint and broke the glass. I don't think there's any consequence, but that is a memory I have.
Okay.
I remember next door there was another family, Jewish family, and we used to play with their children. Their children were a little older than I was, but then I had my sister who was 18 months older than we were, than the twins. My older brother was a good deal older. He was born, I guess, 8 or 9 years before us,
okay,
so he was really a different generation almost.
Yeah, and a different generation. Kind of.
Yeah, but I remember...
Did he look after you guys, though? Or did he,
no.
No.
The thing in my family was, and I look back at this and it's painful, there was very little love expressed at any time in my family, none between my father and mother, and very little, I mean, not that they didn't look after us and I'm sure loved us, but it was never expressed. No affection. It was a very...
No hugs, no kisses, no.
Nothing like that. And that of course, has affected me very much over the years. As I look back, I recognize the consequence of that background.
Did your father, by any chance, fight in the First World War, or? No,
he was. I think he was born in 1887. So he was, I guess, 17.
Yeah.
He was too young. He was too young.
Okay, I'm just asking out of curiosity. So I want to. So now we have kind of a background of your family and social, economic background a little bit. Orthodox. You moved to
not Zionistic particularly.
Okay, that's the next question I'm going to ask. Was your household Did you have any Zionistic upbringing in the house?
No, I would say not. My father, I'd say, was observant, but not political at all. And I don't remember any particular Zionist tendency in the family.
Okay.
My mother's nephew, that's to say a cousin, was strongly Zionistic, and he was Hashomer Hatzair.
And this is from your mom's side?
That's on my mother's side.
Yeah.
But there was, I'd say, there was very little contact with any family, either with my mother's family or my father's. In fact, my father's family, I can't remember anything at all about my father's parents.
Okay.
I have a picture of my grandfather as a bearded man with a yarmulke, but I don't remember actually meeting him.
Okay.
I must have been taken when I was a child. My father's mother, I did meet a few times, but I would never visit her. I was never close to either of my grandparents.
So did you, for example, ask you a question? In your home when you grew up, did your family have the tzedakah box of the JNF?
Yes. Oh yeah, we had tzedakah box, and we observed the holidays. Pesach.
No, that I understand, but there was always in a lot of houses.
Oh yeah, no, tzedakah box is the blue box.
The blue box, yeah.
Oh, there was always a blue box. I certainly recall that.
And did you know what that box was for as a child?
Not specifically, no.
Okay.
It was just one of those.
Okay. And what when you are, how old are you when you moved to Golders Green?
I was probably maybe 7 years old,
Okay.
I'm guessing.
So what kind of school do you go to when you enter first grade? What kind of elementary school are you in? Are you in a normal school?
I don't remember at all going to school in New Cross. I may have done so, but I don't recall ever going to school there. I also don't recall going to Talmud Torah in New Cross. We did have a teacher come to the home to teach us rather than going to Talmud Torah. However, when I moved to Israel and looked through actually when my older brother's widow died, and among her memorabilia, I found Haggadahs which were given to my brother and myself as prizes from Talmud Torah when we were in New Cross. So we must have been there,
yeah, but you don't
I don't remember at all.
And what about at Golders Green? Tell me
Golders Green also, I don't recall going to Talmud Torah. I remember having a teacher coming to us once a week, and learning with him. I remember one was an old man with a very good reputation, Mr. Creditor was his name. What I remember particularly was that his daughter married Hugh Gateskill, who was a prominent politician. There were several other teachers I can vaguely remember.
But you don't remember a certain school?
No, not Hebrew school.
But did you go to a public school then?
Oh yes.
Did you have friends that were non-Jewish in these schools?
I went to public school in Golders Green.
Okay, so you went to Talmud Torah and so probably
not Talmud Torah.
Okay.
Wessex Gardens School, which was an elementary school. There was, I would guess, maybe 50-50 Jewish and non-Jewish. We were, I mean, I obviously was...
So you did go to a public school?
Oh, yes.
Green. So you're not living like in a ghetto?
No.
You're seeing...
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of ethnicities where you're living. There's there's different. There's non-Jews. There's
of course. So friends. We had certainly some non-Jewish friends.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And did you wear, when you were a little kid, did you have a yarmulke on your head?
No.
But at home?
No. No, neither did my father. No, wearing Jewish sandals, but I think it would have been very unusual to find in those days people.
So the dress code was British, normal.
Completely British.
Completely assimilated.
No Hasidic rule.
No tzitzit, no kippah.
I think my grandfather probably would have used those, but not us. We were British.
Yeah. You were British, and as being a young Brit, it's I don't know what your memories are of, but you lived in London through the Great Depression. Do you remember the Great Depression? Do you remember the effects that it had? Or not really? Because you were young.
No. I was born in 24, exactly. So the Depression, let's say I was 10. Yeah, but no, I wasn't really conscious of any problems in education. We were somehow escaped that.
Now, when I could be jumping a little bit here, but I want to know, when is the first time that you hear the word Palestine? That you understand that there is a place over there that is ruled under a British mandate, and that there's problems there. Now, this doesn't have to be in the 40s. It could be like when you're in high school, or maybe you're in a youth movement.
No, I don't remember at all in school. Even in high school, I was never, I was going to say I was never in the youth movement. However, the answer to when I first was conscious of Palestine and etc. was through my cousin, the one I mentioned before, my mother's nephew. Archie Simons was his name, Simons. He was, they say, he was a strong Zionist, and I use that phrase now in the sense of the old definition of Zionist. It's someone who gives money to somebody else to send a third person to Hachshara. He wasn't giving money. They were relatively poor. They lived in the East End of London. But he was a strong Zionist, but he never came to Israel. But there was a group that used to meet in East London, where they lived, of Hashemite theorists who actually formed went to Hachshara, and eventually many of them did come to Palestine and were established a kibbutz, and I think kibbutz Hanasi was where some of them settled. I don't think I ever met any of them in Israel, but some of them did.
Do you remember this group?
I remember some of the people in the group. There were a couple of the I guess Madrichim. One was a guy named Ginger Marks, who was Ginger was his description. He was redheaded, and now looking back, I think he was a colourful figure, not always necessarily reliable. That's the stories were not necessarily true. The other one I remember, whose name I remember, is Yaakov Morris. Now, Yaakov Morris, I say, at that time was Hashemite. I think later he cooled down somewhat, and I think was part of the government in Israel. I believe so.
Okay.
That was my main connection. But one more thing. One summer vacation, and on summer vacations we'd never had, or I never attended camps in the sense of the American camps of either Zionist or non-Zionist organizations when you go away and stuff. But there were one summer I did go to a camp which was Hashemite Sa'ir.
Okay.
And I was exposed to some of the theoretical backings, the differences between Mapai and Mapam, and the teachings of Borchov. I think Borchov was the philosopher behind Hashemite Sa'ir. So I was exposed to the politics.
How old were you?
I must have been maybe early teens.
Okay.
I would think so.
When
I was in high school.
The right age to have all these
to have all these
ideas
and exactly.
the time that the mind is ripe for information and ideology.
Ideology, exactly.
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
I mean, I thought the kibbutz was the ideal way of living.
Okay.
At that time, I was only a teenager. I wasn't going to start going to Israel, but I was associated with this group, and they must have been very influential.
So you were associated with this group of lads from Hashomer
and girls.
And girls, yeah.
Yes.
And were you ever like really a member, or were you like kind of on the fence?
I would say more on the fence than a member.
Okay, but
the group was
but they knew you.
They knew
you, and you were kind of like.
They were mostly East Enders, and I was Golders Green, so I wasn't exactly a chevra.
Okay, you were kind of a.
Well, I suppose I
just but your status, where you're from.
Yeah, they were could say friends for us, and I'm talking about my brother and myself, because in those days we did everything together.
You and your brother, yeah.
Me and my twin.
Your twin, yeah.
We were just remember we would go to their meetings once a week or so.
So this is basically kind of your first interaction
exposure
with Zionism.
Yes.
And it's basically Hashomer Tzair,
yes,
which is the left.
The left wing.
The socialist part
yes.
of Zionism.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to talk now a little bit about pre-World War II and what you remember in Britain as a... first of all, I want to ask you, in 1936, 37, and 38, there's riots that break out here in Palestine. Do you guys hear about it?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
When you talk about riots, I can vaguely remember Oswald Mosley and riots in London.
That's something, okay.
Something else, but not Palestine.
Okay. 1938, 39, especially for somebody who's growing up and living in Britain, are very politically very charged times. Chamberlain is the prime minister. Yes. There's the whole issue with Munich, with the giving up of the Sudetenlands. There's now I know this is very far from you, especially as a teenager. But do you remember these? Do you remember the tension?
Yes.
Do you remember the mood?
Yeah, I do. I remember. Perhaps the first major thing that I recall was when the Nazis shot Schuschnigg in Austria. He was the premier. That was before the Anschluss.
Before the Anschluss? Okay.
Yeah, that was I think maybe 6 months before the Anschluss. I can remember somehow hearing about that. Certainly I remember the Anschluss itself as something that happened, but it was over there.
Yeah, it was over there. What else do you remember?
Of course, the rise of Hitler and the anti-Jewish, the concentration camps. I knew about them. We didn't know that the Holocaust.
Well, it
was no Holocaust at that time.
We're talking about before the war.
Yeah, we knew about the concentration camps and about anti-Jewish activities in Germany.
For example, do you remember Kristallnacht? Do you remember when it happened?
I don't think I remember it happening. My memory is more being told about it by other people.
Sure. I want you to think about an incident that happened before the war on the international stage that made you think we're doomed. Like, this is not good. I mean, in 1939, you're 15 years old when the war breaks out.
Yeah.
You're old enough to know, like, you're a young adult.
Yeah, certainly I can remember Munich.
Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I remember Munich. I remember Chamberlain. I can picture the picture that he coming back, flying back from Munich, waving a paper out of this troubled, out of this thistle danger. I plucked this flower, peace. I think something like that he said. I certainly remember Munich, and the disgust. I mean, Munich was popular in September of '38.
Yeah, because he looked like he saved the day.
Yes,
yeah.
but that wasn't. Certainly, the Jews didn't take that attitude.
Do you remember any talk in the streets, at home, with friends, about the situation of the German Jews?
Yes.
Especially in 1937, 38, 39?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we had a teenage girl came to lived with us in our house. I don't know if she was Kindertransport. I think she probably was. But I remember there was a girl who lived with us for I don't know how many months, but
in your parents' house?
In our house.
So you guys took in a kid?
Took in, well, she was not a child. She was already, she was able to, she was almost like a maid. She wasn't, she was certainly a member of the family, but she could cook and prepare, and she looked after my father. She had a respect for him that my mother never showed. In fact, I sometimes think, sort of looking back, that my mother was jealous. Not that my father was never a womanizer. My father and my mother admitted. He said whatever she had against him, she never accused him of being a womanizer. But I think she resented somehow the attention that this girl, I think her name was Elsa, but I'm not sure about that, paid to him, which I think for her was the normal respect or love of a child to the father. But we were never expressed in our family in that way.
How old was she? Was she like 20?
I think she might have been 18.
18.
I'd be guessing. Something like that.
And would she tell you stories about what was going on in Germany? Or?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember that.
No, okay.
I don't know how long she lived with us, but I do remember she put on a lot of weight once she was with us. That's somehow a stupid thing, but that's something that...
No, that's definitely... now, we're going to go to September 1st, 1939, the day World War II breaks out. Mm. Do you remember where you are?
Yes.
Tell me.
This was a Sunday.
Okay.
Amongst other things, my father, on Sunday mornings, we always, when I say we, from perhaps the age of mid-teens or late teens on, Sunday, we had to go to the father's shop, to the business.
On Sundays? On
Sunday morning. They were open Sunday morning till, of course they were closed on Shabbos. But they open on Sundays till maybe 1 or 2 o'clock, and we used to go to the store. We didn't do anything useful there. We just wandered around, presumably to see that nobody was shoplifting. But we hated it. Both. I'm talking about when I say we. I'm talking about my twin brother. We hated it. And I think that's one of the things we resented very much from my father. Why do I say this? Because Sunday, January the 1st was...
September the 1st.
September the 1st, we were in the shop, and I remember the air raid siren, which was on almost soon after the declaration of war. Soon after Chamberlain came on and said, this is... where I can remember some of his speech at that time. And there was every alarm, which of course proved to be a false alarm, but at the time we said those Germans, they must have started the planes out before the war was declared. Of course they didn't. So that's where I was when war broke out. Of course the next year, almost a year, was the so-called phony war.
The dummy war or the phony war?
The phony war.
Yeah, the phony war, of course.
I was in high school then, of course, and probably in the fifth form, which in England at that time, fifth form was the top form for everyone, but some students went on to the sixth form, which was a kind of pre-university thing. So we were in school in the fifth form. That was until the Blitz began.
Okay, we're gonna or the Battle of Britain.
The Battle of Britain and the Blitz.
Yeah, so the Blitzkrieg. You're talking about
the Blitz. I'm talking about Blitz on London, the bombing of London.
Yeah. So, from when the war breaks out until the Blitz on London, there's a year that in that space of time. Is it life is normal? Rationing? War effort? You're now 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
Are you the civil defense?
No. Well, the life was relatively normal. There was food rationing. My mother's brother, or brother-in-law, I should say, was a butcher. And so we had more meat than was generally possible on the ration cards. So I don't think we suffered. I don't remember any particular suffering, although we were aware of things.
Can I get you some water?
Yeah.
Yeah? Let me get you some water. Can I get you some water?
No.
No? I'm sure you've heard this story many times.
No, actually, no.
I haven't heard it.
No?
No,
I'm in the refrigerator or from the tap?
No, just from the tap.
From the tap?
I'm not one. I'm talking now more than I think I've ever talked.
Good.
That's right.
That's very good. We like that. It's very, very good.
I never heard any of
Here you
it.
go, sir.
Thank you.
And you've only known him a few years, so I'm not joking.
Oh. You're married 64 years?
Okay. So
So we were during that year.
So
we weren't really short. Dad went to business as always, and
business was running as normal. You know, at this time, the first
because in those days there was wrestling and there was black market, and as an illustration of the tension. My father had a brother. He had another store in Houndsditch, a smaller store. His brother was Leslie.
What was it called? The fake war?
Phony.
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 Yeah.
My mother always thought, and may well be true, that there was a lot of black marketing going on, and because there was black marketing, profits couldn't be declared, and my mother always accused my father of putting a substantial amount of money in a safety box in a bank that he was funneling to his family. Whether it was true or not, I've no idea, but she always accused him and was bitter about it. She believed, and it may well be true, that when he was first in business and her brother he employed her brother in the business, and she says at one time she promised him that he would become a partner. He never did. He was always one of the top employees, But
Your mother's brother.
my mother's brother. So my mother always resented, always accused Dad of supporting his family financially and not keeping his promise to her family. These are the kind of family things. Whether it was true or not, I don't know. She thought it was true.
You just remember.
And we don't. I have no idea. But certainly that was always attention. So that was particularly during the years up to the war and during the war.
When the war breaks out, do you know anybody who's drafted into the army? An uncle, an aunt, a teacher, a this, and that.
Yes, well, Leslie, I mentioned Leslie, who also had a store, and he was the one that my father was accused of helping. He had a son who was almost the same age as my older brother, Aubrey. He went in the army.
Did your brother go into the army?
My brother did not. My father arranged that he would instead become co-owner of a farm in Kent, near Ramsgate in Kent. And my older brother became a farmer. It was a pig farm, as well as agricultural crops, the corn and all kinds of things. My father and my brother worked in the farm throughout the war. He had been trained, he'd been an accountant. He was, that's to say, he'd gone to school, he'd qualified as a CA, a chartered accountant, intending to be in the business. But the war interfered with that, and I think he worked maybe for a year or so in an accountancy firm. I don't remember being happy with it. I don't remember my brother ever being really happy. No, he had friends and he was fairly happy, but when he was working on the farm, physical work, and I think looking back, they were perhaps the happiest days of his life.
But that got him out of the war?
That got him out of the army, because he was a farmer.
So your father planned it, that he would...
Of course. He planned it. We would, as children, we were not old enough to go, but we would sometimes spend summer holidays in the farm in Kent.
How far is Kent from London?
70 miles.
So your brother doesn't go to the army?
My brother's not in the army. I have nobody directly in the army.
Okay.
The only one is Stanley Sober, who's a first cousin. He's in the army, and he served throughout the army.
Okay. Do you remember? This is just another historical thing. Do you remember when Churchill became prime minister?
Yes.
Because that was a big...
Yeah, well, that was after Norway invasion, and we lost Norway, and then somebody stood up and the commandant and said to him, old man, it's time for you to go, or something like that, and he left. Yes, I remember that. I was very politically conscious, and then by that time, I was older, but I was still influenced, as most or many students are, with left-wing politics.
With what?
Left-wing.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, teenagers or young adults, I think, typically are idealistic, and certainly in those days were strongly influenced by Russia. We had no idea of what was really going on in Russia. Russia was the great red hope, if you like. This culminated eventually in university when I joined the Communist Party. I'll come to that later, but...
Yeah. So this is where you're about what, 16, 17 years old now? 15,
Yes.
16,
Yes.
17?
Yes.
And you're becoming... Is there a song that you guys used to sing or something like that you could sing for me?
Yeah, there was the Spanish Civil War at that time,
Exactly.
you remember?
Yes.
And there was a song, The Red River. There's I remember the and the stand for Madrid that they made. I remember that, and the International Brigade. That was the International Brigade. Incidentally, and quite beside the point, when I look back now at the people that went to Spain to fight in the International Brigade, it's not that different from ISIS and Muslims going now to fight in Syria. It's not exactly symmetrical, but it's close enough to, in my mind, that I can understand how an Islamic kid in the West would go to Syria and Iraq today to fight.
Would you have wanted to go to Spain and fight for the?
No, I didn't, but I sympathized with the people that did.
You did, okay.
Because they were the socialists fighting the fascists.
So how did the International go? I want you to sing a song for me if you can remember.
No, that's the only. That's the red. Yeah, it's a folk song. The Red River Valley.
Red River Valley.
But this was. I remember the stand for Madrid that they made. That was where they eventually lost the war when Franco conquered Madrid. That's the only song I remember, but I was aware of the Civil War.
Your twin brother, does he share the same kind of?
Basically, yes. We're close. We're not emotionally close, but we're doing the same thing. We're dressed alike, and we do things pretty much the same together. We're very much doing the same thing.
Okay.
Until first year, until university. We'll come to that.
Okay, we'll come to that. Now, in after the occupation of France, and Belgium, and Holland, and Norway, and Denmark.
And Dunkirk.
Dunkirk. Do you remember Dunkirk?
Oh, yes. I mean, I remember it as an event, and
Sure.
the incredible
evacuation.
Yes, the way that even little ships went over and ferried soldiers back, and the sea was calm, and that was one of the miracles of Dunkirk, was that for a couple of days the North Sea, which traditionally is often quite rough, was very calm, which allowed the British to evacuate hundreds of thousands of soldiers.
350,000.
Yeah.
One of probably the most traumatic periods of your life, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm wrong or if I'm right. You lived in London during the battle for Britain.
During the battle for Britain, but not during the Blitz. When I talked about the Blitz, that was the battle with Britain was when the Luftwaffe were trying to defeat the Air Force, and they came very close to succeeding. But then,
so the battle for Britain was in the air.
Was in the air,
and the Blitz was the.
No, well, then when Goering changed the tactics. And according to, looking in retrospect, they say the RAF was down to its last. They were losing pilots, and it could take a long time to train pilots, and to make planes. And the Battle of Britain was nearly lost when Goering switched, or Hitler switched. Instead of fighting the Air Force, he started terror bombing of the cities. And that began the Blitz of London.
tell me about the Blitz of London. Tell me about, I mean, what year is it, 1940?
1940.
You're 16.
Yeah, I'm in high school, and the bombings start. And we moved. At that time, I told you I was in Golders Green, but by the time the war, we'd moved to an apartment near Marble Arch, which is central London. When the Blitz started, we moved to a residential hotel not far in the west end of London, where there were cellars with room for people to put down blankets and for the night, like they did in the underground stations, because this was a hotel kind of thing. We were there, I think, for not many nights, but we were there for a time, and then my father found a house in a small town about 40 or 50 miles from London. Fenny Stratford was one of the towns that I remember. And this would be probably maybe in December or January. The Blitz had been going on for a couple of months. And I was going to high school at that time, sixth form. And of course, when we moved out to the suburbs to get away from London, of course I stopped going to school. I don't remember, we used to ride bicycles all around. I never went to school there. My father would drive into London every day, picking up a couple of his the employees on the way, and commute and come back at night. I remember the night after bombing London, they had one particular night of fire bombing when they set London on fire. This was the first extensive use of fire bombing. And driving in, and you could see in the distance the effect of the fire of London. My father continued to work and commute. We lived out in this suburb, and this was maybe February. Ivor and I, my brother was in the farm in Kent. I don't remember, my sister must have been there, but I don't remember anything of what she was doing. And we decided we had to go to school. And the question was what we were going to study. Now, my brother and I both loved mathematics, and would have been probably our favorite subject. Looking now at how much the world is ruled by mathematics, it's hard to realize that in 1940, mathematics, at least to lay people, meant being a teacher. Didn't seem to be much of a career, and we felt, what else? And I decided I want to go into chemistry. We were both like sciences. And he decided to go into engineering.
Your brother?
My brother, my twin. And we both enrolled in the Regent Street Polytechnic, which was a technical school, which was evacuated. It was originally Regent Street, which is central London, but they were evacuated to Lancaster, which is a town in the north of England. And so in the middle of the school year, say February, we went up to Lancaster to start I doing chemistry amongst other things, and he doing engineering, along with a few other subjects. Lancaster was a very pleasant, nice little town. The war was on, but it was far from the big cities. And
how far from London is Lancaster?
I think maybe 250 miles.
And this is basically like your last year of high school, kind of. This is like your...
No, it's the last year of high school is fifth form. Sixth form is like pre-university. Not everyone went to sixth form.
So you're going to sixth form up in Lancaster.
Yeah.
And you're going to study...
I'm aiming at a degree in chemistry, and he is in engineering.
And you guys are together?
We're together in we're in digs. We're in living in a private house and living in Lancaster.
And the war's still going on?
The war's still going on.
But you guys are kind of safe and sound somewhere else?
Relatively, yeah. Well, Lancaster was unlikely to be bombed.
Unlikely to be bombed. Lancaster.
We had friends there, although we were, there must have been Jewish boys and girls, but I don't remember particularly Jewish kids in Lancaster.
Is there anything significant about Lancaster that happened to you there? Is there anything...
Yes.
Okay.
I'm coming to it.
Excellent.
The school was located in a technical school in London called the Storey, S-T-O-R-E-Y, the Storey Institute. There was one long room which was a lab, and half the lab was for chemistry, where we would try to analyze mixtures and identify things. The other half was a biology class, and they were dissecting rabbits and frogs and stuff like that. Needless to say, the students on the chemistry side would wander to the other side and back. Okay. Now, I'd had maths and chemistry and physics, but never biology. I was fascinated by these biology kids who were dissecting animals. Completely fascinated. So I'd say I went to Lancaster maybe in February, and by May was the end of the school year. I went back to London and told my parents that I've decided to switch. I don't want to do chemistry, I want to do biology, I want to go into medicine. My twin brother, meantime, is doing engineering or doing whatever leads up to an engineering degree in the same school. And after I said I'm going to do medicine, he comes and says, I want to switch to medicine. We didn't discuss it between us. We were independently, both decided to want to go to medicine. And it happened that the school, the institute, the Storey, and the Regent Street Peck did offer what they called first MB. In England at that time, there were MB is the Bachelor of Medicine. Uh-huh. So there was first MB, which was basic science, physics, chemistry, biology, and those subjects. Second MB, which was university, was anatomy, physiology, pathology, and drugs and stuff like that. And then in those days, you didn't go to a hospital until third MB, when you had lectures in medical subjects, and that was the first time you saw a patient. It's quite different now. Now the medical students are introduced to patients very early on. Okay. But that was that. So first MB, the Regent Street Polytechnic was qualified for first MB, and so when I went back to school in September to there, instead of doing chemistry, I was doing first MB. We had to apply for medical school, and we both applied and were accepted at University College London, which is a very prestigious, was one of the top 12 or 14 medical schools in London at that time.
How old are you at this time?
By that time, I guess this must be 1942 probably. 1942 or 43. So I'm 17.
You're 17 years old. What,
I was 17 or 18. No, yeah, maybe 70. We were probably younger than the most.
and doesn't the British Army want to draft you?
Not when you're a medical student. Medical students were exempt. So second MB, we're going now. We're back to London, to university, except that because of the Blitz, the medical school is evacuated from London to Leatherhead, which is a small town in Surrey, south of London. It's still potentially in the war zone.
Leatherhead?
Leatherhead, Leatherhead. Not like leather, Leatherhead. Leatherhead. The school took over.
So that's where you did your first year of medical school?
No, second MB. First year was in Lancaster.
In Lancaster, okay.
The second year was Leatherhead. Now, Leatherhead, they took over an estate which had once been a wealthy person's home. Big house, ballroom. Can you manage?
Can I help you? You okay?
Can I go?
Of course, of course.
She just wants to go to the bathroom.
Of course.
Let me get the walker out for you.
No,
Oh, you got that
there's
one.
a walker right here. Right here.
Oh, okay. I hope I didn't disturb.
No, don't worry about it.
Thank you.
It's okay. It's okay. Everything's fine.
There was a lovely old house with a ballroom and lots of rooms were classrooms. There was a coach house, which was a physiology lab, and there was another separate with the anatomy lab where we did dissecting. So this was the school. Originally we were in digs in one of the homes in Leatherhead, and subsequently there were some people that were living in the school. There were bedrooms as well, and we moved into the school in the digs, which was
What's the digs? What does that mean?
digs, lodgings. We had rooms there, and that was socially much more attractive because
Are you at this time? So now you're in university. You're in your second year. You're 17 years old.
maybe 18.
Maybe 18.
Yeah.
You're going to be a doctor, right? You want to be a doctor.
You want to be a
Yeah,
doctor.
you want to be a doctor. Is the left political coming out of you a little more?
Yes, because
Tell me
the
about that.
the lecturer in physiology is a communist.
The teacher.
The teacher
Okay.
is a communist, and he had a small group of 4 or 5, maybe 6 people who were members of the party.
Tell me about the party. Tell me.
Well,
This is very interesting.
I'd say I'd been exposed to left-wing politics
Before.
and I remember, it seems strange now, but there was a book written by Friedrich Engels, who was one of the theoreticians of Marx,
Yeah.
called The Origin of the Family. That's the name of the book, and he traces the socially developed family and the development out of what they call group marriages. Now, whether it's nowadays accepted as true or not, I don't know. I don't know how his standing academically is. But I remember reading the book about group marriages, and for some reason it affected me strongly. Because my family I was very not happy in my family. It was not a happy family. We joined the Communist Party.
Who's we?
My brother and I.
Tell me, how do you join the Communist Party? What do you sign a paper, or you? What do
We
you do?
probably signed something. I don't remember particularly signing, but it meant we met occasionally with maybe I'd say with the physiology lecturer. He wasn't a professor, but he was a lecturer, and with maybe a half a dozen boys. I don't remember if there were any girls. I don't think there were. I think there were a few, mainly Jewish boys, by the way, in the Communist Party. This is a cell, I suppose you'd call it, in the medical school. We'd meet, and I don't remember what we did or talked about, but we probably had talked. Of course, this was during the war. This was Russia had already been invaded, and calling it open. There was not yet open the second front, but it was. Russia is our gallant ally now. Being communist is not. It's not such a sin.
But ideologically, you sympathize with the communist way.
Oh yes, yeah, no question. I thought it was I thought the kibbutz was the right way to live, and
sure.
And that the communists, in terms of theory.
So you joined the Communist Party. You're now a member of the Communist Party.
Yeah, but it's an intellectual exercise at this stage.
It's like being a part of the sports club in school. It's like
it's more academic. It's an intellectual
you're
exercise.
Like running around, burning buildings.
No.
You're focused on school.
Well, we're in Leatherhead. We're not in London. We're not in the centre of anything. We're in a little small rural town. I told you we went first MB in Lancaster.
Right.
Now the university also had first MB course, which was a 2-year course that was evacuated to the north of Wales.
So you're moving again?
No, well I'm in Lancaster. There, the first MB, the university people, are in Wales, but they're on a 2-year course, so that. No, they've been, when I go to Leatherhead, I've come from Lancaster, they've come from Wales. The point about it is that they go back to Wales for vacation, and I go also. I joined with a couple of boys or girls, and how do we want to go? We're going, this is during the summer vacation, we want to hitchhike. My father, of course, says he hates. By the way, when we want to go to the medicine, my parents, of course, were quite happy. There was no problem. When we said we wanted to switch from chemistry to medicine, and my brother said, my parents were very happy with that. Now we want to, just for vacation, to go to Wales. Vacation with the girls.
And this is just people from school?
Just 2 or 3 people from school going for summer vacation, summer trip. But we want to hitchhike. Why? Because you're young and you like adventure. My parents, of course, they wanted to pay the fare, but no, we're not interested. And we hitchhiked to go, which is a couple of 100 miles. I mean, it's not around the corner. So that was a vacation which we had with him. We have to finish this was during the war. The medical course was shortened. They put an extra term in during the summer, so that we would graduate sooner, become doctors quicker, and because speeding things up for the war effort, yes. So we had a summer course also, and then the next year we're going to go to 3rd MB, which is the clinical, and this has got to be in a hospital. This is in the University College London, which is a prestigious school with a medical school and a...
So you're doing is it like a stage?
Not the, no. The start would be more like the intern.
Yeah, the intern.
No, you haven't studied medicine yet. You've just studied basic science. You haven't had any lectures yet in medicine. This is strictly medical school.
So you're in this hospital in London.
The lecture, there's a medical school, and next door to it is the hospital, the hospital. It's the old hospital, famous because that was where, oh, never mind, a murderer was chased. It's a school, the hospital is built as a cross, and each of these has a little cross. And these are the wards. So the ward is sort of maybe 8 to 10 beds around. An old hospital. Now where were they? I'm going to medical school.
Your third year.
And by third year, and we have lectures, and we go see patients for the first time. We deliver babies for the first time. We have rounds, and we see patients, and we're learning medicine. This is now Russia is calling for open the second front now, a big movement, and that's the one time I recall. No, there were two times I remember as a student being involved in some kind of a rally. One was when we were
what?
A rally, a political
a rally.
shindig.
Okay.
One
the first time.
One time I somehow recall. One time there was some kind of an inter-university rally when we stole their mascot or something like that.
Okay, and the second?
The second was when we'll open up the second front in Trafalgar Square. This was, of course, political. And it just meant there and probably waving a placard and singing songs and stuff. But that's I think the only political rally I ever went to, but that was what we did when we were in medical school. Initially, as I said, we were in London, but then the London Blitz changed to the V1s and the V2s. Okay. Rather than the Air Force, because the school evacuated again because of the V1, V2s to Watford, which is just on the outskirts of London. And there was a Seventh-day Adventist hospital, Seventh-day Adventists, the Christians that observed Shabbos as their day of rest. And we're in digs again, and we have lectures and the hospital in Watford. And we're there for quite a few months. I don't remember how many, but it was we had bicycles, so it was a pleasant, something like being evacuated the first year when we were in a small school. Quite, quite pleasant. Very different from the kind of atmosphere in central London, but it was all right. We had lectures, and it was quite pleasant. I remember I was still in London when the V2s were on, and I can't remember quite the thing because here's the story. I'm in the medical school in Gower Street, Middlesex Hospital, which is another hospital there, and I've got a good friend there, David Blend, and I want to visit him one day. And there were two ways of going. You can go this way or this way. And purely by chance, I went this way. When I get to there, a V2 lands here. If I'd gone this way, I'd have been killed. So this was kind of coincidence, the chances that happened, you know. So that's one thing I remember vividly anyway, we're in Watford, and then we come back to London, and I graduate from medicine in 1947.
before that, before you graduate, the war is over, 1945.
No, I graduated in I graduated in 1947.
You graduated in 1947.
Yeah.
So I want to go before you graduate
Yeah.
to the end of the war. I asked you,
VJ Day.
Tell me about it.
VE Day, we're in medical in London.
Yeah?
I'm living at home and commuting because it's just a bus ride away. And when we're going out with celebrating in the streets and singing and with nurses, and so it was a very exciting, happy time. Just crowds of people singing and bubbly drinking and kissing, and it was a big celebration. That's really what I remember.
Did you think that you would finish school and have to go fight in the war? Did you think the war would still go on?
I think not the war. The war was still on with Japan, of course, but no, we were still. No, we're still in medical school, and
still in medical school.
Yeah.
And what's the situation at home? Your parents are divorced.
No, they're still together. They're arguing and fighting a lot. That's how they're just. My dad's busy with the store, and he's away most of the day, most of the week, as a matter of fact, except Saturday night. I remember they used to go to a movie traditionally, or they had friends come over to play cards.
So it's 1945. You're still in medical school. I have two questions to ask you.
Yeah.
One is, when do you first realize the huge atrocities that happened to the Jews in Eastern Europe?
I don't remember at all being we knew there were we didn't know about the extermination. We knew that Hitler was persecuting the Jews. I don't remember any specific thing. I think Kristallnacht, as I told you about.
Yeah, but we're talking about after the war. After the war, it's revealed. It's revealed the gas chambers, Auschwitz, Maidan.
I don't.
You don't remember? Okay.
No.
Okay, that's fine. And when do you also realize, in 1945, towards the end of the war, that there's some serious issues going on in Palestine? Now this is before the 1947 UN Declaration.
I don't remember.
You're
not there. No. Okay. I'm not doing anything Zionist. I'm not going to any meetings or really. I'm busy in medical school. I'm really concentrating on my studies, and that's all.
Okay, so let's.
Incidentally, no, it's not 45, but maybe. It was maybe a little bit later that my twin brother moved out of the house. That was the first time we were really separated.
Okay.
He goes to with 3 or 4 other people to rent a house and live almost like a bayit as they are now. And I was probably, I thought it was bad for him to move out of the house on principle, but I think really I was jealous. I never, they're partly to do with personalities. There was one of the medical students was a chap named Richard Michaels, who was extraordinarily charismatic.
Mm-hmm.
He was very different. He influenced people strongly. My brother was, a disciple. He was one of the people that organized this bite. By it, I mean people living together in a house, sharing the housekeeping and stuff, and renting.
Flatmates.
Just instead of living at home, they're living.
Sure. And this guy.
I'd say he was very charismatic. I was almost frightened to go out. You had to be under him. You couldn't be with him. You had to be under him. And I was sort of, in some ways, scared off by his personality. Incidentally, he dropped out of medical school at that time, but subsequently went on. And my brother had contact with him until just before he died 2 years ago. But that's another story. That's his story, not mine.
But why do you mention this guy? Why do you mention him in your
He was
story?
one of the medical students that I can vividly remember.
Okay.
As I say, I was almost frightened of him.
You were almost frightened.
Oh, but I think it was. Yeah, I think it was frightened. Not physically frightened, but I don't know. Anyway, that's one of the people in medical school.
Okay, so we're going to jump a little
Yes.
here. The war is over. You graduate medical school in 1947?
Yes.
1947?
In March of 47.
1947. March. Okay. Your parents must be very happy. You know.
Well, they're glad I graduated, yes.
You graduated, yeah. You're done with school. Your brother graduates too?
Yes,
That's
we
every
both
Jewish
graduated.
mother's dream. They
Right.
have 2 sons as doctors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now,
Right? Isn't that
yeah.
like the
Yeah.
what else could you ask for? A lawyer?
Right.
No, doctors are better. Anyways,
You were.
we graduated.
exactly. And you were graduating. This is in March 1947.
Now, doctors are still subject to the draft in England in that time. We're still subject to go to the army. But before the drafting, you're allowed to do an internship, to be a house physician, a house surgeon, to get usually for a year. My twin brother gets a job as a house physician under one of the professors, one of the teachers in the medical school. This is prestigious. It's, to get called back to the medical school is prestigious. So he's a house physician for Dr. I don't remember who, I think cardiologist, but he's a house physician. I get a job in a small hospital outside of London.
Okay.
First in the emergency department, and then as a house physician. After 6 months as house physician, my twin brother goes in the army, the British Army. I'm still exempt because I've got this other job, and he is sent to Benghazi in Libya. This was the British Army still had bases in Libya.
So your brother's sent to Libya.
He's sent to Libya. I get another house job as a house surgeon in another hospital So my call-up is still postponed. It's now 48, and I'm expecting to go into the army when I finish this British Army of this job. I'm home for a weekend, and a classmate of mine, Harry Sparrow, who lives just across the street, not far from me, called me up one maybe Saturday night, says, "Dad, I want to talk to you." So I said, "Sure." We meet in a pub just up the hill, and we sit down with a glass of beer at a table. And he says, "Stan, have you following what's going on in Palestine?" This time, this was before, it was after the vote, of course, in 47.
Yes.
And before the war.
Okay.
No, it was.
No, it's
after the war.
No, I'll tell you exactly when it is. It's after the declaration of the UN.
Yes.
But before the declaration of the state. So it's
yeah.
The declaration was in May 48.
Yeah.
And the UN partition was in November 47. So it's probably in between.
But there's all kinds of rioting going on in Palestine.
Tons. There's a war.
Right. So he sits down, I sit down and says, do you know what's going on in Palestine? I said, "Of course." He said, "Do you think we should do something about it?" I said, "Yes." That's how I came to Israel. As spontaneous as that.
With a beer with a friend.
B'mikra, as they say, out of the blue. Now, looking back, I wasn't keen on going to the British Army then because Russia was no longer our gallant ally and we were getting ready to fight the Russians. And I'm still communist. I don't want to fight, I don't go in the British Army. If I'm going to be in an army, I want to be an army I believe in.
Okay,
That's one thing. And the other thing is, I'm not happy at home anyway.
You're looking for more.
But the decision, I mean, the decision was that spontaneous.
I want you to go back for a second, and we're going to definitely get back to this very soon. When the UN declares or partitions Palestine into two on November 29th, 1947, I'm sure you hear about it, but does it really do anything to you? Does it?
Not very much. I read about how they're dancing in the streets, but no, I am not particularly
into it. It doesn't do anything to you.
No.
But you are following what is happening.
I'm reading the newspapers always, but I'm politically interested in what's going on in the world. I'm certainly, I'm involved in what's happening.
You know what's going on in current affairs.
Right.
Okay. This guy that calls you, what's his name, your friend?
Harry Sparrow.
Why does he approach you? Because you're Jewish?
Yeah, we were classmates. We were both Jewish. I don't know why he called me, because we lived just very close to one another. His background is strongly Zionist.
Okay, but that's fine.
But
I can understand. But you're like...
I mean...
why do you say to him, yes, I do, I know about it, and yes, I think it's important to go, like...
I don't know. I really don't remember anything leading up to it.
So what happened?
I'm an intern, I'm a house surgeon, I'm doing my job, and that's it. We decided we're going to Palestine.
Okay.
We're both doing internships or house jobs, and we think that if we leave, we can't tell anybody we're going to go, of course, that's illegal. So we're going to have to leave our jobs without telling them. So we think it's not fair to leave right away in the middle of in June, July, because our job's supposed to go on till September. That's when the 6 months ends.
September 48?
September 48. So we decide we can't go right away, but we will be going towards the end of our time when we wouldn't be missed that much.
And you guys are discussing this all at the pub? Or
No,
a few days
no,
after?
no. Well, we discussed it, no, at the pub or soon afterwards. We had to go back.
Who do you contact to get to Palestine? How does this work?
I don't do anything. Harry is the from the Zionist family. He gets in touch with Patwa. Do you know what Patwa is? Professional and Technical Workers Aliyah.
Okay, how do you spell it?
P-A-T-W-A. Professional and Technical Workers Aliyah. That's an international organization, and they have a bunch in London, there's in France, there's one in New York.
Okay.
He does everything. He gets in touch with Patwa.
You're like, I'll go with you, but you take care of everything.
Exactly.
It's a good deal.
He gets that with Patwa in London. He gets the address of the Patwa in Paris. And we agree we're going to go in August. In August...
What month is it now? Do you know?
August.
No, what month is it now that you're talking about?
When we agree to go?
Yeah.
Or probably June, July.
So the state of Israel is already...
Oh yeah, the war is on.
No, the war is on, but also there's the Declaration of Ben Gurion. Has he already declared
Yeah, yes, it's after the Declaration of State and the invasion of
all the
Egyptian army, yes.
Egypt, Iraq, Syria.
Yeah, incidentally, when I said to my parents we're going to Israel, I don't remember nothing negative.
No.
They didn't worry, they didn't say don't go, and they didn't say do go. It was just, that was it.
Do your thing.
So we decided to go. So in August, on one weekend, we ostensibly are going for a weekend in France.
I don't understand.
We're on the way to Israel.
Right.
So the story is we're going to France. We have rucksacks with clothes and whatever we're going to take to Israel. I had a radio set which never worked, so I could hear stuff. That's another story. And we're going to go. So we're going to the ferry, and in Dover, before getting on the ferry, we each mail a letter to our chiefs back in London, to our chiefs in the hospitals. It's explaining why we disappeared without warning and apologizing and saying, we hope you understand. We mailed a letter to get a ferry to London, to Calais, and then go to Paris, where we contact Patwa. Harry does it all. I'm not going with him. And from Paris, they put us on a train down to Marseille.
Wait a sec. Your brother doesn't want to come with you? Oh, he's in the army.
He's in the army. He's in Benghazi.
He's in Benghazi. Right. So from London, you go to Dover.
To Dover.
London.
And that's the ferry.
Dover, and then to Calais.
The ferry to Calais.
How do you spell Calais?
C-A-L-A-I-S.
C-A-L-A-I-S, and then to Paris.
To Paris.
So now we're in Paris, and you go to the Fatwa.
To Patwa.
What happens there?
Patwa put us on a train.
I know, but you go there and you say to them...
I don't remember anything in Paris.
Okay. And then to Marseille.
Actually, it's interesting. The one thing I remember in Paris, and it's nothing to do with Israel, is that the song La Vie en Rose was very popular. And whenever I hear that song, I'm back in Paris. I don't remember doing anything there, but for some reason that song associates me with...
How long were you there for in Paris?
I really don't remember, probably not more than a day or two.
And please remind me the name of your friend that you're with.
Harry Spiro, S-P-I-R-O.
Harry...
Spiro, S-P-I-R-O.
Spiro.
He
And you
subsequently married. I was his best man at his wedding,
So you
and he had another story, and he was chief of obstetrics in Naharia for years, and he died a few years ago.
So you and Harry are on an
No.
adventure.
We're going to Paris, and we're sent to a camp. There were 2 camps, I think, near Marseille at that time.
Yes.
Granavinas.
Yes, which one are you sent to?
Granavinas,
That's where you're sent to.
yes.
Interesting, because the guy that I interviewed, Avi Grant, was sent there too. Mach sent him there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he came from Leeds. And they sent
Well, we were sent there from Paris, not from
Yeah.
France.
No, he was sent there from Paris also.
Yeah.
He
all right.
went from Leeds.
It was. I think there were 2 camps, and that was. They were
What's the name
big
of the
camps.
camp?
Gran.
Wait, what's the name of the camp?
Gran.
Gran.
I think it's right. Gran.
G-A-R.
Gran.
Grand.
No D.
Gran.
Gran. Arenas. A-R-E-N-E-S.
Venus.
I think that's the spelling.
DP camp.
It's
Yes.
25 after 12, by the way. 1 o'clock is out.
Yeah, we'll be done. We'll be done by 1. Yeah, I promise.
Before, but
We're gonna
No
be
way.
done. We're gonna be done in 20 minutes. Is that okay?
You go down. I'll be down soon.
No, we'll be
Yeah.
done in 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. No problem. So
We're down in Granavinas.
yeah, so you arrive at the DP camp.
Yeah.
This is probably your first. I mean, these.
We're doctors now.
understand,
We're,
yeah.
we're not medical students, we're doctors.
Right,
And there was one other Romanian doctor, I remember, that was there.
Romanian.
Romanian.
Now you get to this DP camp. This is not an easy thing to see.
Oh well, it wasn't terrible. I mean, there were shacks to live in, and they have food. I don't remember particularly what happened there, but it wasn't. It was a summer camp. It was adventure.
Summer
I mean,
camp.
this is August.
It's a DP camp. There's disease in there. There's people who from the
No,
Holocaust. There's
yeah, they're mostly DPs. They'll
How-
come from Italy.
how long did you spend there?
it's okay.
I spent 10 days.
Okay.
Harry was left after about 4 or 5 days. I don't know. We
Now-
gave in our passports,
Sure.
and
Now-
then we're in their hands, and they tell us what
Now,
to do.
And you're in their hands. Whose hands are you in?
Whoever organizes the camp, I don't know.
Who are you in? Are there any Palmach people there that you're in?
Probably, but I don't remember any. My memory is not good. I don't remember any details about the camp. I know I was there for 10 days.
Okay. Anything significant happened?
In the camp, no.
No. Okay. So when do you get on a boat or get on a plane?
A boat.
Do you remember the name of the boat?
Yeah, the SS Mala.
Hold on. SS
M-A-L-A.
M-A-L-A.
It's a Mala. They said at the time, I don't know if it's true, that it was originally Teddy Roosevelt's yacht.
We'll check it out.
And
how many people are on the boat?
it seems to be hundreds. I don't remember. The boat, there's a deck, there's a hold, and then there's another hold beneath that with ladders going down. The holds are set up with bunks just like you see in the camps. with a life-saving thing, just as one long sausage, which is your pillow, and there may have been blankets. I don't remember blankets, but there were 5 shells, I think. So but people were packed in like sardines. I, as a doctor, was privileged. I could sleep on deck, which was, of course, much better. This is in the Mediterranean summer's night. Food was, the refugees were organized into groups, I think of about 10, and one of the 10 8 or 10 would have a bucket for food. We collect the food and then take down and serve it out. As a doctor, I'm on dock, and we had some kind of clinic there. I don't remember any awful difficulties, but except when there was a storm and everyone was seasick, and the whole stank, of course, because of all the mess. We took 10 days to go from Marseille, actually La Ciotat. The deck, we got on board, and not in Marseille, which was really in big city under surveillance. I'm sure it was authorized, but we went to a small dock called La Ciotat near Marseille, and that's where we got on board. The professional people, a few people were on first, and then the refugees came on in groups, and I remember we got the organizers got on the ship in Marseille and sailed to Marseille to pick up the refugees. I remember coming in, the ship's crew were also volunteers and amateurs, and I remember coming in to land and Ceuta, throwing the ropes and missing very short. But we pulled in La Ciotat and then we sailed. It was 10 days, and part of the way the engine broke down, and there was a couple of days till they were fixing it, and we had a storm somewhere off roads, but eventually we see Haifa and Mount Carmel. We're in Mount Carmel.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember the thing, the Mount Carmel and the lighthouse. And singing, that was we'd arrived.
Do you know what date you arrived on?
It would be the end of August.
1948?
1948. Most of the war was finished. There was still, I think, the only action that I recall.
There was still war going
was
on.
Kaoji in the Galil was still there.
Yeah, and down in the Negev.
The
war was still on.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there were truces.
So you arrived in Haifa at the end of August 1948.
And we shipped down to Tel Aviv, directly to the army headquarters.
To Televinsky?
Televinsky.
Is that where you're sent?
No, well, we said, I don't remember where
before that.
Televinsky was the hospital at that time.
Tel HaShomer.
Tel HaShomer.
Yeah. Wait, you get off the boat in Haifa.
Yeah.
You get off the boat. Go through customs, you go through immigration.
I don't remember any of that. I'm sure we did, but I don't feel customs.
It's all right.
Okay, we're going to be done very shortly. Very shortly. You get off the boat at Haifa. What's your first memory in Israel?
I think probably with disappointment. This is August, September. I expect to see a flourishing country, and I see desert, basically. Everything's brown, everything's dry, there's very little irrigation, and I'm disappointed in the actual landscape. But I'm not unhappy, but I remember being disappointed by what the land looked like, because, as I say, it was toward the end of the summer and everything was dried up. I don't remember much except that we were driven down to Tel Aviv, where I signed on for the army, and I'm sent back to Haifa to the hospital. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't. Whatever they did, they did. I was, in their hands, and instead of being sent to a unit, to a gedud or whatever it was, I was sent to a hospital to do, in effect, to be an intern, as I was in England, which was fine. And so I get to Haifa, and there I meet, there's quite a lot of young doctors and professionals, mainly South African, enthusiastic, lovely people. And I get a room to share with a young South African, and I meet start working there as an intern in the surgical team. Surgery there's more surgery, which is really orthopedic surgery, and that's where I'm introduced to orthopedics, because in medical school you only get a little smidgen of different specialties. Okay. I hadn't even been exposed particularly to orthopedics.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop for now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to stop. Is it, hold on, let me just do one